The film begins in a scorching desert where a woman named Catherine rides in on horseback and encounters a young boy, Edward. She thanks him for the horse and cheerfully asks if they can go on a boat today. Edward silently points to an enormous rusted ship half buried in the sand like a ghost from another time. But Catherine directs his attention to a much smaller boat nearby, suggesting they use that one instead. Edward mutters that it's broken then. Without warning, his body twists and morphs into a terrifying monster before bolting into the distance. Startled, Catherine quickly presses a glowing sensor embedded in her hand, and in a flash the desert fades away, replaced by a high-tech laboratory where she lies strapped into a strange machine. Here we discover that this world is built on experimental technology. Doctors can literally step inside the minds of patients. Catherine, a skilled psychologist, has been working for months with Edward, who has been in a deep coma. Her mission is to reach into his subconscious, earn his trust, and break down the mental walls that keep him trapped. After the session ends, Catherine removes her elaborate costume and exits the sterile lab. Waiting outside are her superiors, Dr. Henry and Dr. Miriam. They remind her that Edward's wealthy parents have been bankrolling this research, but after 18 long months of failure, their patience is wearing thin. They argue Edward should be taken to a regular hospital, even suggesting that Catherine's encounters with the boy may be nothing more than dangerous hallucinations. Far away, a man named Carl pulls up to an abandoned building in the middle of nowhere with only his loyal dog, Valentine, by his side. Inside, he stares at a massive water tank holding a girl suspended within it. But the eerie calm is shattered when her body suddenly convulses violently until she finally dies before his eyes. Back at the lab, Dr. Miriam warns Catherine that Edward's parents are desperate to end the project, but they've managed to secure a 6-month extension. Catherine argues for a radical new approach. She wants to allow Edward into her mind. Miriam fiercely opposes the idea, insisting it could endanger them both. Catherine pushes back, claiming that Edward has been trapped in a toxic nightmare for too long and the only way to save him is to show him a healthier world. Meanwhile, Carl's true nature emerges. He's a sadistic serial killer. He loads the girl's corpse into his truck and drives home, where he lays her body out on a metal table. With cold precision, he bleaches her skin until it's ghostly white, transforming her into a lifeless doll. Then, in a grotesque ritual, he suspends himself from hooks pierced deep into his own flesh and watches recordings of the girl's final moments underwater. The following day, horror strikes again. A woman's body is discovered beneath a bridge. FBI agent Peter arrives at the scene with his team, his face grim. The metal collar clamped around her neck reveals a chilling truth. This is not the first victim. 6 other women have already been murdered in the exact same twisted way. Peter's frustration boils over. He has been chasing this merciless killer for far too long. Carl wastes no time stalking his next victim, a woman named Julia. He tracks her every move, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. Meanwhile, the FBI team digs through the evidence and makes a shocking discovery: a single dog hair left on the latest victim's body. It belongs to an albino German Shepherd, a breed so rare it's nearly one of a kind. Later that evening, Julia parks her car and suddenly hears a sickening crunch beneath her tires. Alarmed, she gets out and finds Valentine, Carl's dog, pinned under the wheel. Distraught, she bends down to comfort the whimpering animal. But in that vulnerable moment, Carl silently creeps up from behind and viciously attacks her. Soon after, police are alerted to Julia's disappearance, fueling even greater panic. With time running out, investigators tighten their net, urgently tracking the rare albino dog and a suspicious truck whose tire marks match those found near the bridge. Peter rushes to Julia's home to meet with her devastated family and learns a heartbreaking detail: Julia was engaged and planning to start a new life soon. While still processing this, Peter's phone rings. His partner delivers shocking news. A breeder remembers selling an albino puppy to a suspicious man, and they even have his address. With the lead finally in hand, the FBI speeds toward the location. Along the way, they pull up the man's file. His name is Carl Rudolph. To their surprise, he has no criminal record, not even a registered firearm. Inside his secluded house, Carl relaxes in a bathtub, but suddenly his body seizes violently. He stumbles from room to room, frantically searching for medicine until his strength fails and he collapses on the kitchen floor. Moments later, police storm the home, weapons drawn only to be stunned by the sight of Carl unconscious and helpless on the ground. Julia, however, is nowhere in sight. The albino dog is discovered, but not the missing woman. As Carl is rushed to the hospital, Peter searches deeper into the house and ventures into the basement. There, he finds rows of bleach bottles, chains dangling menacingly above a metal table marked with the Carver logo, and children's toys twisted into grotesque shapes. His blood runs cold when he switches on the TV only to witness horrifying recordings of a girl's death. Meanwhile, Julia is revealed to be alive but imprisoned in a glass cage, pounding on the walls and screaming for help, though no one can hear her. Later, Peter consults with a doctor who has examined Carl. The diagnosis is Grim. Carl suffers from a rare and severe schizophrenia contracted in utero. It lay dormant for years, but trauma awoke it. The doctor explains that his disorder is untreatable, and Carl will never regain normal consciousness on his own. Peter grows desperate, insisting that Julia's life is hanging by a thread. Her chamber will flood soon, and only Carl knows where it is. The doctor explains the killer's cruel system. Victims are held for 40 hours before an automatic timer unleashes the water. Julia's clock is ticking fast. Searching for solutions, the doctor leads Peter to Catherine's facility. Peter pleads with her team to attempt something unthinkable, enter Carl's mind and pry out the location before it's too late. The board quickly weighs the risk. Edward's treatment is paused, and even his wealthy parents agree, though reluctantly. The final choice falls to Catherine. She warns them that schizophrenics cannot tell fantasy from reality. If she goes inside Carl's mind, his warped perceptions could trap her forever. Trust building with a patient normally takes months. But when Peter shows her brutal footage of Carl's past victims, Catherine's resolve hardens. Time is short, and Julia cannot wait. She agrees to proceed, though fear lingers in her voice. The lab prepares for the dangerous session. Catherine explains a disturbing detail about Carl. His obsession with chains came from the way they let him feel weightless, imitating the sensation of floating in water. Dr. Henry briefs the detectives. Their machine creates a neurological synaptic transfer, mapping one brain's signals into another. Catherine has a microchip in her arm. Her lifeline pressing, it will immediately pull her back to reality. The system activates, and Catherine and Carl both fall into deep sleep as their minds entwine. Catherine opens her eyes inside Carl's subconscious, stepping into a surreal vision. She first sees a young Carl being baptized in a lake by solemn adults. Suddenly, the scene dissolves, and she's in a shadowy tunnel where a black dog shakes blood from its fur. The boy scrambles up an enormous ladder, and Catherine chases him into a chamber. At its center stands a massive horse, while young Carl hides nervously in the corner. Catherine gently approaches and speaks to him, trying to earn his trust. But Carl's eyes dart to his watch, his panic mounting. He suddenly shoves her away from the horse, and in that instant razor-sharp blades crash down, slicing the animal apart. Catherine gasps in horror, realizing the boy was trying to save her. Yet the most disturbing sight is the mutilated horse itself, still alive despite its grotesque injuries. Little Carl bolts into another corridor, and Catherine follows, her heart pounding. She stumbles into a nightmare room where women are trapped in cages, transformed into mechanical dolls. Terrified, she freezes, but then a towering woman bursts out of one cage and drags Catherine into a vast hall. There, seated on a throne draped in purple fabrics attached to hooks in his flesh, looms a monstrous, demonic version of Carl. With a chilling voice, he demands to know where she came from. Horrified, Catherine slams her palm on the sensor embedded in her arm, ripping herself back to the safety of reality in an instant. Peter is still working on Julia's disappearance when urgent news arrives. Catherine has returned from her terrifying journey into Carl's mind. He races back to the lab, only to find her trembling with fear, her face pale. She gasps that she has never seen anything so horrifying in her life. Dr. Henry warns her to rest, explaining that if her brain accepts those nightmares as real, she could lose herself forever. Meanwhile, Julia's fate grows darker. The glass cell sprays its first violent jets of water. spurting across the room in cruel bursts that remind her death is closing in. Later, Peter finds Catherine sitting quietly near Edward's bed. She explains the boy's fragile state, but also confides something chilling when she enters a mind. She doesn't just see memories, she experiences every dark corner people try to hide. Catherine admits she cannot bear what she saw inside Carl's twisted kingdom, a place where he rules as a self-proclaimed king who gives himself the right to commit unspeakable acts. Peter, haunted by his own past, reveals something he's kept hidden. He once worked as a prosecutor. He failed to convict a child abuser due to lack of evidence, and the very next night the man was found in his living room with a little girl's body mutilated beside him, her heart chillingly stored in the refrigerator. This memory broke Peter, pushing him to abandon the law and join the FBI, determined to catch predators like Carl. Catherine, shaken, admits that Carl still holds on to a fragment of innocence, his child self. She believes if she can reach that child, they may finally learn where Julia is being held. Catherine steels herself for a second session, but this time she insists Valentine, Carl's albino dog, must be present. The team brings the animal in, and when the loyal dog licks Carl's hand, a faint spark of calm flickers through him. Soon, Catherine drifts back into the dream world. She awakens inside a suffocating glass cage, scrambles to open the lid, and is suddenly hurled through endless tunnels until Valentine appears, guiding her. The dog leads her into a modest home where young Carl stands at the sink, washing dishes. Catherine gently hands him a mirror, telling him, "When you need help, shine this with light." The boy beams with excitement, clutching the gift. But then disaster. Catherine accidentally knocks a plate from the counter, shattering it. Terrified, young Carl hides her in a closet just before his father storms in. The man's rage explodes. He viciously beats Carl for the accident while Catherine watches, powerless and horrified. She soon sees more fragments of Carl's childhood, endless moments of cruelty and abuse that scarred him for life. The dream shifts again, and Catherine suddenly faces the adult Carl in a bathroom. A lifeless woman floats in the tub, his first victim. Carl stares at her coldly, asking why she's here. Catherine answers gently, saying she wants to help him. But Carl doesn't believe her. His voice shakes as he recalls the day his schizophrenia first emerged, the day of his baptism, when his father shoved him underwater. Carl thought he was drowning, but no one helped him, not even as he screamed in panic. Catherine seizes the moment and pleads, demanding to know where Julia is. But Carl snaps, furious, and retreats into the shadows. From the darkness emerges his monstrous alter ego, the demonic Carl. He lunges at Catherine, restrains her, and locks a heavy metal collar around her neck. Back in reality, alarms blare. Something has gone wrong. The doctors realize Catherine is trapped inside the nightmare and cannot press the chip to escape. Peter makes a bold decision. He will enter her mind himself, even though he has no training. Dr. Miriam warns him that to wake Catherine, he must remind her of something deeply personal about her own life. Taking the risk, Peter allows the machine to pull him into Carl's world. He awakens in a surreal field, where three women stand, their mouths open, whispering eerie laments about their sons being stolen by cruel fathers. Suddenly, young Carl appears, holding the mirror Catherine gave him. He flashes the light, urging Peter to follow. Peter races after the boy, reaching a strange room where a large bed dominates the space. Catherine lies there in a lace gown, her face hidden behind a mask. He kneels beside her, removes the mask, and whispers that this is not reality. But Catherine, lost in illusion, ignores his plea and pulls him into a kiss. Before he can react, the monstrous Carl appears once again, yanks a bag over Peter's head, and the detective collapses into darkness. Peter jolts awake to a nightmare. He's tied down, helpless. Out of the shadows emerges the demonic version of Carl, grinning as he slices open Peter's stomach and pulls out his intestines, while Catherine stands nearby, disturbingly smiling. Desperate, Peter cries out that none of this is real. He then reminds Catherine of her little brother who tragically died in an accident. The memory shatters her trance, and she finally snaps back to herself. With fierce determination, Catherine seizes an iron rod and drives it deep into the demon's back. The nightmare shifts, and suddenly Catherine and Peter stand in another chamber. In the center is a cage filled with water, and inside floats Julia, limp but still alive. Beside them stands little Carl. Catherine gently asks him to point out the location on a map. As Peter scans the scene, his eyes lock onto the Carver logo stamped on the tank, the same logo he had seen in Carl's basement. Realization floods him. He now knows where Julia is. He urges Catherine to leave quickly, but she turns to the frightened child and promises him, "We'll come back for you." Before they can escape, the demon storms in, snatching the boy away. Back in reality, Peter wastes no time. He calls his team, ordering them to trace everything about Carver Industrial Equipment: who bought it, who sold it, who used it. The FBI races out to chase the lead, while at the same moment, Julia's cage begins filling rapidly with water. She thrashes and gasps, struggling for every breath. Meanwhile, Dr. Henry realizes Catherine is preparing to dive back into Carl's mind on her own. Alarmed, he and the doctors rush to stop her, but she has already locked herself in the lab. Catherine re-enters the dream world, this time dressed in a nun's habit. She meets little Carl once again, who whispers that he wants to stay with her forever. Catherine, her voice heavy with sorrow, tells him it doesn't work that way. But then, before her eyes, the boy shifts into adult Carl. He recalls a haunting childhood memory, finding a bird with a broken leg. Knowing his cruel father would destroy it, Carl drowned the bird himself. His eyes glisten as he hints that what he really wants is for Catherine to kill him. But she shakes her head, whispering that she cannot do it. Their conversation is abruptly shattered when the monstrous demon charges back into the scene. Meanwhile, in reality, Peter gets word. The tank had once been purchased for a factory project, but the owner went bankrupt. When the state reclaimed the land, Carl himself had been hired to seal the property. Peter realizes this is the place and rushes there with his team, clinging to hope. Inside the dream world, Catherine battles fiercely against the demon. She unleashes arrows into his body, striking him again and again, but time is running out. Julia is nearly drowned. At the factory, the FBI combs through the site but finds no sign of her. Inside the cage, Julia manages to rip a pipe from the ceiling and breathes through it for a moment, but she's weakening fast. Catherine plunges a sword into the demoness chest, but horror strikes when she sees little Carl bleeding too. The truth dawns on her. The child and the monster are bound together. Killing one means killing the other. She kneels before the trembling boy. With tears streaming down his face, he begs her to save him, and not to leave him alone. At the same time, Peter spots a pipe running outside the building. He follows it and discovers a hidden hatch leading down to the basement. Bursting inside, he finally sees Julia trapped in the glass cage, desperately breathing through the pipe. He shouts for her to hold on and then smashes the glass, unleashing a flood of water across the basement, but saving Julia's life at last. Elsewhere, Catherine makes the most painful decision of her life. With tears spilling down her cheeks, she cradles little Carl before gently drowning him, releasing him from his lifelong torment. In that same moment, the demon vanishes into nothingness. Back in reality, Carl's body convulses with seizures before he dies. His faithful dog Valentine whimpers sadly beside him. Catherine awakens, sobbing uncontrollably, while Julia collapses into Peter's arms, weeping with relief. Days later, detectives scour Carl's basement for evidence. Catherine arrives quietly, her face solemn. It's revealed she has adopted Valentine, giving the dog a home filled with kindness instead of cruelty. She speaks briefly with Peter, sharing her decision. She intends to use the reversal technique to bring Edward into her own mind, believing it's the only way to reach him. Concern flashes in Peter's eyes, but she reassures him with a fragile smile. Grateful, Peter thanks her sincerely before they part ways. In the closing scene, Catherine once again stands in the desert with Edward. But this time, the barren wasteland has transformed into a paradise. Trees bloom in full color around them. Catherine has finally earned the boy's trust, and together they walk forward into a brighter world.